Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank you all for coming out on to talk about a subject that, frankly, its level of importance has to be right at the top of the list. It is for me. I want to thank President Knapp for continuing to be a good friend to the District of Columbia government, and it's wonderful to be able to have gone to undergraduate and graduate school here and be a part of a university that understands that there's more than Foggy Bottom here in the District of Columbia, and that is a result in substantial part because of your leadership, Mr. President. So thank you very much for being a good friend to the city, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. And those who are on your team, like Bernie Dimchuk. Bernie here? I can't believe it. He's always everywhere. And then, of course, Dean Guthrie, who has worked with Steve Moore to be able to put this together. You know, and as I look out, I know that there's some people also who have done a fantastic job of trying to draw attention to east of the river. I see Brenda Richardson sitting here, who she works for Councilmember Barry, but she really is, she is truly an at-large member in the sense of being everywhere and always having such an optimistic and upbeat approach to life. Brenda, I want to thank you for continuing to be a spirit that we can count on to make sure people know that there are 8 wards and not 6 wards in the District of Columbia. And I would be incredibly remiss if I didn't mention James Bunn. James Bunn has absolutely been a moving force. Mr. Bunn, you have to stand up. I have to recognize you. I attended not so long ago, a few weeks ago, an event up at the Petey Green Center, at which we were there to talk about opportunities east of the river, and particularly in Congress Heights that night. And again, Mr. Bunn was at the center, as he often has been, of making that happen. So I want to thank you. And I'm sure he's glad that nobody describes him as Sheila Bunn's father, because Sheila, of course, is the chief of staff to Congresswoman Norton. And it happens to me all the time, believe it or not. I have people come up and say, for those of you who know my son, are you Carlos's father? So yes, I know how it is, Mr. Bunn, when those kind of things happen. And I think Sandy Allen is here too. Is Sandy still here? Where is she? Former council member Sandy Allen. Okay, Sandy, thank you very much for being here. And there are numerous other people who are here as well. I see Carol Mitten, who is here, who's working with Department of Homeland Security to be able to hopefully use that as a tremendous catalyst for what we hope will happen. In fact, I'm going to take the hope out of it. We're going to make this happen one way or the other. Frankly, if we don't see a huge difference at the end of 2014 and what's going on east of the river, I will be a very unhappy and dissatisfied camper, because I've set out to really focus on making sure that we have a jump start to economic development activities in Wards 7 and 8. And for those who may not know, and I'm not trying to be flippant, but Anacostia and Ward 8 are not synonymous, all right? Anacostia is part of Ward 8. There's Congress Heights, Bellevue, there's lots of other areas, and of course, some people think, I've been in situations where people thought Anacostia included everything east of the river, including Ward 7. When I was on the council, I was representing Ward 7, and there was a gentleman who came because he had a new residential development that he was pushing, and he handed out the brochure. He wanted some action on an alley closing. And he handed out this brochure, and on it said, in the heart of Anacostia. Well, the development was at the corner of 28th and Pennsylvania Avenue, southeast. Everybody know where 28th and Pennsylvania Avenue is? That's not even Anacostia. It's not Ward 8, it's Ward 7. So let's be clear that we have more than one community east of the river, and I'm pleased to be able to live east of the river. We are spending a lot of energy and a lot of attention and a lot of effort to try to bring economic development to east of the river communities. When I got elected, we set out on 4 priorities. One is, of course, bringing strong public education to this city. We continue to be committed to that. Earlier today, I was a part of the Broad Foundation Awards. I don't know if you're familiar with the Broad Foundation, but Eli and Edith Broad established a foundation that has now endowed this awards program. They just put $40 million into it to ensure that each year $1 million would be able to be awarded to an outstanding school public education system in the nation. They've been doing it now. This is the 11th year. And I was there for the finalists and the award. The award went to Charlotte Mecklenburg today. And I'm not going to lie to you. I kept sitting there saying, man, I want to be able to get up here and be number. I'm so competitive, man. You could, if you want to pitch pennies to the line, I'll pitch pennies to the line, and I'm going to stand there and do it until I get my penny closer to the line than yours is. And that's the spirit that we ought to have about education in this city, that we want to be the best, and we can be the best. We're on course to do that, and ultimately it's going to be the answer to a problem that we see right now, and that is not so much joblessness. It's easy to talk about joblessness, that, you know, this person doesn't have a job, but even more difficult is the mismatch between the skill sets needed for emerging jobs at this stage and the skill sets that so many of our people have who are looking for jobs. Our jobless rate has gone up in this nation again, and our jobless rate has gone up in the District of Columbia. I think we're now between 10 and 11%, which is the highest rate that I can remember certainly in the near past. And that's why we've got to be able to focus on it, not so much even across the city, but as we go further east. In Ward 5, the unemployment rate is 15%. In Ward 7, it is 17%. And I think many of you know, in Ward 8, the jobless rate is now 25%. And that just includes the people who are still looking for jobs. But again, it's more than just creating jobs. We've spent a lot of time and attention on this effort. We've tried to improve public safety, and we are continuing to do that, because when people feel safe, they are even more enthusiastic and energetic about living in any community across the city as we try to become one city. I don't know if you follow the crime statistics. I read them every day. We have something called the morning report that comes out. And the first report I look at every morning is the crime report. And we actually are on course at this stage to have the lowest level of homicides in the District of Columbia in the past 42 years. And frankly, when you look at where the reductions are, they are in the 6th District and the 7th District. Used to be that those two districts, which are east of the river, led the city in crime. They don't anymore. As a matter of fact, last September 2010, we had 15 homicides in the District of Columbia. What is today, the 19th? 20th. I'm a day behind. I want to get a day ahead. Today is the 20th, which means that we have, what, 2/3 of the month gone? 15 homicides last September 2010. As of today, this September, we have 2 in the entirety of the District of Columbia. And that's the kind of thing that helps people feel safe, that it's a city where people want to live and be a part of. And we are on the grow. We are on the grow. We had an addition of 30,000 people in our population since the last census. We went from 570,000 to 601,000. And I think on the current trajectory, we probably, by the time we get to the next decennial, which of course will be 2020, I think we could have added another 50 or 60,000 people in population in the District of Columbia. And guess where a lot of those people are probably going to wind up living?
7 and 8.
That's exactly right, east of the river. The residential development is underway. You can see what's going on with Sheridan Station down at Howard Road. You can see what's going on with the Matthew Moore Memorial development on Martin Luther King Avenue. And we are really jump-started, for those of you who follow, we have really jump-started the New Communities program, so that anybody who's living in one of our concentrated public housing developments will be able to continue to live east of the river or in Ward 8 if they choose to, but we also will add housing so that we have mixed income housing at the end of the day. And both of those, Sheridan and Matthews, have units that are set aside for people who live in Parkchester and Berry Farm so that people will be able to stay there, but also it will be additional units for varying levels of income, which is exactly what we want to have if we want to be a diverse city and diverse east of the river. We've done a lot of work. We got a lot of work yet to be done. President Knapp mentioned a job summit that we held even before I was sworn in. That was in December. And we started to focus then on what the various sectors of this city could do to help us get people back to work. I've talked about my priorities, and in one way or another, each one of them impinges upon getting people employed. In June, I did a jobs and economic development speech, and we did it right on the banks of the Anacostia. Wow, that sounds great. The banks of the Anacostia. I gotta put that in. I had to put that in some of our brochures. The banks of the Anacostia. The day will come. The day will come when people will be able to swim in the Anacostia, and I don't even think it's that far off. I mean, it's not tomorrow, but I don't think it's that far off. Well, you can swim in there any day you want to, but at your own peril at this stage. But the day will come when it will be a safe body of water in which to swim. We did it right on the Anacostia River, and we talked about some of the things that are coming, especially east of the river. I don't know how many of you have followed the project we have with NVM Strategies. They're going to be they're bringing their national headquarters to the nation's capital. I think the council voted today on their industrial revenue bond. Everybody follow industrial revenue bonds? Who follows industrial revenue bonds in here? You need a life. I knew you'd raise your hand, George. Industrial revenue bonds, of course, are not paid for by the city. What the city does is basically allow its tax-exempt status to be used by firms so that they can borrow, but the firms are responsible for paying back the industrial revenue bond. Well, NVM Strategies got a bond, I think, a total of $80 million for the city. That's a lot of money. And the purpose of it is for them to be able to locate their business, which is a cartridge, inkjet cartridge business. They're going to do assembly of cartridges. It's going to be located in east of the river communities. And we think we have a spot for them to be able to do that. And then secondly, they're locating the national headquarters, which will be on the east side of the St. Elizabeth's campus. Again, jump-starting economic development and job opportunities east of the river. And by the way, having met with the person who's the president of the firm, tremendous social conscience. Because the first question I asked him, I said, well, how many people are you going to hire? And they are talking about, over a period of 3 years, they're talking about hundreds of people being hired. So I said, what about people who have been, welfare recipients? What about people who have been incarcerated? What about people who have had substance abuse problems? And he didn't hesitate on any one of those. That every one of those groups that I mentioned, he indicated that they will have entree to their firm. They're looking for people who are prepared to do the job, who will come to work every day, show up on time, and bring a good attitude. And isn't that fundamentally what we all look for? People just want a chance. So I think they too will represent a wonderful addition to our efforts to create more jobs east of the river. We just established, in fact, even in the aftermath of that speech, we had a summit in July, an economic development summit at Thurgood Marshall and Savoy. And it was absolutely phenomenal. The most phenomenal thing to me was it was a Saturday afternoon. It was really a nice day outside. Every reason not to be at a meeting that day. And there were 600 people who came out to that meeting. We even had somebody who counted the chairs in the room to see how many folks were there. And, there were people in 2 other rooms, and they were standing around the wall. And even the air conditioning went out, President Knapp, and people stayed. It was very interactive, and we now are going to come back on September 29th, I think at the same site. I'm not absolutely sure. At the same site at Thurgood Marshall and Savoy, Mr. Bunn? Yes, sir. To say where we are. And we've already met. I've met a couple of times with our staff. So we are continuously tracking all of this to make sure we stay on track and continue the forward movement. We also have established a new program that I announced last week, One City, One Hire. And the goal is to get 10,000 people employed over the next year. Again, there are a lot of jobs in this area. There are about 56,000 jobs in the region, vacancies. And there are about 35,000 people in the District of Columbia who are looking for a job. Obviously, it's not quite that simple, because we do have such a mismatch between skills required and skills possessed by the people who are looking for jobs. And then secondly, we've got to figure out how we get people motivated enough to take jobs outside the geographic confines of the District of Columbia. You know, we're going to have a new metro line that goes all the way out to Dulles Airport. There'll be increasing numbers of jobs along that corridor. But we've got to figure out the transportation modalities that will be necessary in order to get people out to those jobs, because that's where a lot of job growth will take place in this area, and they will be good paying jobs. We're working with Metro. Metro, we have an excellent, some of you know Tom Downs, who used to be the city administrator a number of years ago. He pointed out something to us recently. He said, you know, Metro is going to hire bus drivers virtually every month for the foreseeable future. And Metro will hire probably 25 to 30 bus drivers each month, which means we're talking about 300 new bus drivers each month. Why shouldn't those jobs go to people who live in the District of Columbia and people who live east of the river? They start at $40,000 a year, which means that that's about $20 an hour plus benefits, and it just goes up from there. And we're going to be working, we already are working with DOES to make that happen. So One City, One Hire. We'll put on the table incentives that we hope will attract employers. It will make tax credits available to employers, the for-profit sector. It will provide on-the-job training and stipends for people in OJT, and we'll provide wage reimbursements also for those who hire folks as a part of the One City, One Hire program. We looked carefully at a program in Atlanta that had done something like this, and it's actually the only one in the nation that I know of. And over a year, Atlanta actually employed between 13,000 and 14,000 people as a result of their program. And I honestly don't see why we can't do the same thing here. In fact, again, as competitive as I am, if they did 13,000 to 14,000, I want to do 14,000 to 15,000, because the District of Columbia should be #1 in doing these kinds of things. If you want more information, go to onecityoneHire.org. And our DOES, which is working rapidly to become a different agency than people think of it as. Unfortunately, DOES has had the reputation of being an agency that didn't perform at such a high level. And that's yesterday. I'm more interested in today and tomorrow. We have an outstanding director in Lisa Mallory, and she's working every day to bring aboard a team that will make sure that the things work effectively. A couple last things I'll mention, and I'll be happy if it's okay to take any questions you all may have. I was here on the campus a week ago Monday for a technology meetup. And if you haven't been to a technology meetup, you have really missed something. First of all, you learn a whole new language, for those of you who don't follow this stuff. But we were at Lisner Auditorium, which is right there at 21st and 8th Street. And I would say there were at least 500 people in that auditorium. And every one of them involved in some aspect of technology, many of them running their own firms or having developed their own firms. And in addition to talking about new apps and new approaches and getting a whole new lingo for some people in the room, folks were tweeting, of course, and and doing all sorts of things. But at the end of the meeting, we were just talking about this, at the end of the meeting, the moderator asked how many people were hiring in the auditorium. Half the hands in that auditorium went up. And some of them were hiring 5 or 6 people. I would say conservatively, there were probably 500 to 1,000 jobs, vacancies represented in that room tonight. And what we have got to become, we've got to become increasingly competitive on the technology front. And technology now is so sophisticated that there's a whole set of job families represented. We, on the east side of the campus, we've talked about establishing that as a technology incubator where we begin to attract companies to east of the river, where they can further develop their companies, but they would have to put people, they would have to engage people, especially who live in Wards 7 and 8, and provide them with the opportunities to become more proficient in the varying jobs that are developing in the technology arena. And of course, we hope, don't we, Carol, that the Department of Homeland Security will be the catalyst that we've all hoped it would be. The Coast Guard building is continuing to develop. I think that will bring some 3,700 jobs to the east side of the campus. Homeland Security, and we're working with DHS, the other DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, to try to see that there's a continuing commitment, because the construction alone would bring 22,000 jobs, and there would be 14,000 jobs, permanent jobs, that would result from the relocation of Homeland Security to the west side of the St. E's campus. Been some pushback on that because of budget issues, and we're going to work with the Secretary of Homeland Security to try to address those issues. For me, I mean, it's wonderful to talk about all the construction jobs being created, and they have yielded some jobs for some people, but not as many as we had hoped they would be. And it's wonderful to talk about the permanent jobs, but there's so many security issues associated with those jobs. They're not going to yield as many as we would like either. And I never saw either one of those as having the best potential for us. The best potential for us is using those opportunities as catalysts to develop the communities in Congress Heights, in Anacostia, in Bellevue, developing the Martin Luther King, Good Hope Road, Alabama Avenue, South Capitol Street corridors in ways that we hope they would. The last thing that I want to see happen, and that is we don't develop the amenities that will serve people who are moving to the community and will serve people who are going to be working in those jobs, that then has the result being they develop like little enclaves over there on the campus. That's frankly, if you think back many years, that's exactly what we had with St. Elizabeth's Hospital. It was in the community, but it was not of the community. It was a mental health facility that at its peak served around 6,500 to 7,000 people, had thousands of staff working over there, and unless I missed something, there was almost no relationship with the community that existed around the hospital. Well, we don't want to repeat that experience. We want to have a different kind of experience in which the people who work there will find the amenities that they are looking for, and that is a lot of people obviously eat every day, and we want to have restaurants in the area for people to use, the banks, the cleaners, and all those things that people do typically that are convenient to where they work. Today, east of the river, for 140,000 people, we have 5 sit-down restaurants. That's 7 and 8 put together. I think there may be 2, might be 2 in Ward 8, and I think there's 3 in Ward 7. That is pathetic. And we have an opportunity with these programs coming along, with these agencies coming along, to be able to have an impact on that. The very last thing I'll mention, and I'll be happy if it's okay to take any questions you may have, and that is we are looking to try to develop a different kind of relationship with our universities here in the District of Columbia. Just what we've sort of piloted in an informal way with George Washington University. There are people, and President Knapp knows this, who said, the universities have an increasing geographic presence in the city. The GW is constantly growing. Georgetown, American University, Catholic University, Howard, Trinity, all of these universities, and they don't pay any taxes. Why don't we tax them? Why don't we do a pilot, maybe a payment in lieu of taxes? Why don't we impose property taxes on them? I personally don't think that that's where we ought to go, because that's going to create an adversarial and contentious relationship, and I wouldn't want to go there unless everything else fails. And what I believe we ought to do, and we just talked about this, I'm going to be meeting with the consortium of universities soon, where all the presidents, they all do show up there, and talk about city services that could be performed for us by the universities. things that would cost us money that we would have to pay for, or things that get deferred because we simply don't have the money to be able to pay for them. The capacity of each one of these universities is tremendous, and in the aggregate, all of these universities, in fact, beyond the governments, I think the universities are the biggest employers in the city. Is that right? 30-some thousand, 60-some thousand, I don't know how many, tens of thousands of people work for our universities. They've got a research capacity, got all kinds of capacity to be able to take on things that would facilitate the work of the city. And that's what I want to work with the universities around, to try to craft a set of things that would go into a memorandum of agreement, and then have the universities go off and work with us to make that happen, just like we're seeing today, bringing people together to talk about where the city is going and playing a role in that. So if I sound excited about this, I actually am. I really am excited. I mean, working in this job is interesting in one way, because if you don't like what you're working on, just wait a minute. It'll be something else that comes along very rapidly. But as somebody who was born and raised in this city, I absolutely love the District of Columbia, and I believe that we have the capacity, that we have the energy, we have the brain power, and we have the commitment to be the greatest city, not just in the United States of America, but in the world. And along the way, let's make sure people understand that we are a disenfranchised people here in the District of Columbia. How many of you all have been in conferences or been in conversations where people will say, in all the 50 states, where are we? We're not one of those 50 states. We are 600,000 people who pay our federal taxes every day. We pay our district taxes. We do all the things that a citizen of the United States does. Yet we don't get the respect that comes with that. And I honestly believe that if it's going to ever change, it's going to be up to the 600,000 people who live in the District of Columbia to make that change. And what an exciting opportunity to increase economic development, to get our kids better educated, to have safer communities along the way, and to have the economic development we want. And in the course of it, demonstrate to people that we deserve a vote, and we deserve support, and we deserve the same outcomes that everybody else does in the United States of America. We can do that together, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make it happen. Thank you all very much. I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mayor Gray, especially for all your phenomenal initiatives as they pertain to Wards 7 and 8. Speaking as an academic, my name is John Whitman. Speaking as an academic, I see huge research opportunities here as we observe the phenomenal transformation that's going to take place. Does the city offer any funding for research to exploit what we can learn from these transitions?
Nope. But what we do is offer you the wonderful, exhilarating intellectual opportunity to be able to assist us. You know, not to be flippant, but that's exactly what I was referring to, and that is, instead of coming in and saying, you know, well, we can probably legitimately impose a requirement that, you know, universities, that you pay for certain things. I think Harvard pays a payment in lieu of taxes to, I don't know, the city of Boston, Cambridge, whatever the case may be. So it's not unprecedented. But I think what I would rather see is doing those kinds of things for the city in lieu of imposing some kind of financial requirement, additional financial requirement on the universities of the city. I'm sure you'd appreciate that, wouldn't you? Mr. Liu?
Mayor, I really think this is an opportunity for me to say something, because I've been talked to you sometime before. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. We are sitting in the national's capital. We are the city for the international capital. So we always look inward towards all different worlds, everything. And then the many states is already bringing international money and international incentive to their states. Say Maryland is already have Hong Kong and Chengdu office. And in Arlington, just last week, already have Hong Kong office. And in Virginia, even hired the almost like the finance minister of the Arlington is Chinese, my fraternity brothers. They developed the Chinese connections. And I think we have all the embassies here, all international treasures in one city, and we're not taking international resources. And I think the international resources we can attack, and then we can bring all the investment. We don't have any international program within the city. If we can do that, we can bring the international money rather than ask Wall Street to tax Wall Street money to provide for War 7, War 8. If we can international money to help the War 7, War 8, I think there's a great potential can develop the city better. And I think there's also a lot of things like solar energy, and we can bring solar energy plants to come to War 7, War 8. We can have lead batteries. And a lot of Chinese investors is all attacked by other cities, including New York City. They have a tremendous program. I think we have a lot of resources, international people here, and international community here. A lot of people we can help the city to do that. I hope the city can initiate some international program and put some emphasis on international thing. I think we don't want only the mayor to be the Washington, D.C. only local mayor. We want to be international mayor. I think the whole city will be greater than what we think it is.
Be the mayor of the world. Your comments are extremely well taken, Mr. Liu. I mentioned a couple of things. One, I think people probably don't know how much we meet with the international community. I probably meet with someone from the international community on the average of about once a week. Last week I had 3 meetings with ambassadors or other folks who are from the international community. Many of them looking to be able to invest or to do business with not just the United States, but with the nation's capital. We have entered into a couple of new sister city relationships. We just renewed one with Rome a few months ago. We did the same thing with Brussels. So we agree with you heartily. And many of you may not know this, but the new city center project, which is developing right at the old convention center site, what helped to put that deal over the top, and we signed it it's been about 4 or 5 months, and how many of y'all been by there and see the work that's going on? It's kind of a big hole in the ground at this stage. Was an investment of north of $700 million by the state of Qatar. And I went to the meeting. I went to the meeting with the various financial leaders from Qatar who were there when the deal was signed. And these are folks who are looking to invest in the District of Columbia. The District of Columbia is extremely hot at this stage. All you have to do is look them in the air. Whereas other folks are looking at the lack of development, around the nation. There's a lot of development going on in this city. Go over to Noma, and see the office buildings that are going up. That's why we want to make sure we bring that to east of the river. And you're right, there are folks who would want to make those investments. We just need to make sure. I'm absolutely convinced that all of this is going to happen. I just don't want, at the end of the day, as all of this happens, that the people who have really worked hard to help build this city and stay the course wind up watching what's going on from Ward 9.
Yes, thank you. Mayor Gray, thank you very much.
One more.
This will be the last question.
My name is Achille West. I'm the co-founder of the Ward 8 Renewable Energy Co-op. And just with regards to your policy going forward, I have a quick question. We saw the Renewable Energy Trust Fund created to invest in renewable energy, and then we saw that fund depleted quickly over the course of several months or a year or so. And very little of that actually got to Ward 8 for whatever reason. But that's not my point. My point is, like Mr. Liu said, that there's many opportunities for manufacturing. And I would wonder if you would consider in your policies to start bringing more manufacturers. For instance, a solar panel manufacturer to Ward 8 is something that we've been talking about, which would provide jobs and then would also take some of that money and keep it circulating in the city so that when solar companies in the city get city money to subsidize installations on people's homes, they're actually buying a product that was made in DC as well. And it sort of connects the dots. So just to piggyback on Mr. Liu, I think that I for one, have come across Chinese investors who are willing to do such a thing or to participate in such a thing.
No, your point is very well taken. I'm familiar with of course, with the Renewable Energy Trust Fund, and I think money was used, and we didn't do that this year. For the 12 budget, money was taken to balance budgets in the past from the Renewable Energy Trust Fund. We actually are working on, you may not know this, but the Department of the Environment and our Office of Planning, Harriet Tregoning and Christophe Toulouse, I've asked both of them, and we're moving rapidly forward to work on a comprehensive sustainability plan for the city, so that we start to bring all of these pieces together, like, you know, green roofs and, you know, reducing our carbon footprint, getting the sustainable, you know, the sustainable energy utility up and running. We now have entered into a contract with an entity that has the expertise, because there's not a lot of expertise nationally, but we did the contract in such a way that all the subs are local DC-based firms. And so the expertise and the capacity will be developed here, and some of those folks are actually east of the river, you know, folks who are east of the river. So I guess the short answer to your question is absolutely. We are committed to you know, a sustainability plan that will recognize the threats to our earth, recognize the threats to our environment, and will work to address that. But we also know that there's a lot of potential for green jobs coming out of all of this, and those are jobs we ought to be training people, especially east of the river, for. Actually, there's some green jobs that take almost no training. Weatherization, for example, you can be trained in 2 to 4 weeks for a job in weatherization, and I think we're going to see more of that as people recognize the potential for energy conservation associated with certain aspects of weatherization. So your point is extremely well taken. Thank you all very much.